I would not have any other bike other than a Tenere 700. I have tried numerous other bikes and come back to this one. It can do anything. It can be your street bike, it can be your backcountry explorer bike, it can be your just go to the store bike. It will do anything. So really, it's a bike for anyone.
I had actually never met Riley in person, just mutually creeping on Instagram. But I saw he got a Tenere 700 and I asked if he'd be interested in making a video about it. He said yes, so we started making plans to do some filming. But before I knew it, he sold the Tenere and bought an Africa Twin 1100. Then the Africa Twin was gone and was replaced by a brand new KTM 890 Adventure R. So I packed up my DR650 and made the 500-kilometer trip to go film the 890. But the day before I could get there, Riley had sold the 890 and was going back to what he called one of his most regretted sales, the Tenere 700. When I finally met up with Riley in person, one of the first things I asked him was, how many bikes have you actually owned?
I have owned now 118 bikes. This is number 118. I know I got most of my bikes because of working at dealerships, being able to buy them for cheaper and then ride them for a few months and then sell them and get new ones. So kind of messed up Pokemon. I thought it was like motorcycles. You're supposed to try and ride them all. I started riding at the age of 8. I made a deal with mom and dad. If I was, a good boy, worked hard on the farm for the summer, they'd get me a dirt bike. So I got a really old Honda XR80. I think it was in 1992. Got it that day. It started to snow, which I didn't care. I rode that sucker till dark. Crashed into a couple trees because of snowing, but been riding ever since. The T7 is a bike I can ride anywhere, which is the reason I got it. It can go on the highway, it can go on dirt, it can go south to the Badlands.
Badlands? In Canada? Surprising, I know, but true. Scattered throughout the southern prairies are cutaways of the earth exposed by erosion and time. It makes for incredible Mars-like scenery and has been to date one of the most amazingly special places I've ever been able to film.
I've had 2 Tenere 700s now. I bought the first Tenere 700 when it first came out. It was not a pre-order, but I got lucky and got one. And then I made a silly mistake and sold it, and I got the KTM 890, rode it for 2 weeks, sold it, and I'm back on a Tenere 700. The 890R seemed to have a few quirks to it that I didn't really agree with. It's very Austrian. The handlebars are lower, the seat's a bit higher, you kind of sit a little more down on it like this, whereas the Tenere 700 is kind of a bit more comfortable feeling. Kind of bars are a little bit higher up, your back's a bit straighter, not hunched over like the KTM, so just really more comfortable. I had a Honda Africa Twin 1100, also a great bike, Japanese quality, really good quality, but a little bit heavier, kind of harder off-road. It's still an adventure bike feel. You get on the Tenere 700 and it feels like a big enduro bike. It does not feel like a big, heavy adventure bike. No, I kind of like it. It feels a lot more like my dirt bikes that way. The fuel tank's up high compared to the 890 where the fuel tank's way down low. Actually, I found to be a very negative thing on the KTM because I started to hop into some single track that was kind of tight like this. And the first thing I did was bump the fuel tanks right on that single track on the edges and basically get stuck. So it's actually really an advantage to not have the fuel tanks here like the KTM and have it up here, hidden and away from danger. And just so you can actually fit down trails. Not over like weight or any of that stuff. I don't know how much suspension it has or any of that or horsepower. It is heavier than a dirt bike, but really it doesn't feel like a heavy adventure bike. Especially once you get up and riding, it really doesn't feel heavy at all. And I'm little, I'm only 5'7". Well, I can get 1 foot on the ground, but I've rarely ever owned a bike in my life where I could get both feet on the ground, so I like things simple. I've had the Africa Twins, I've had the KTM 890 that display every single thing you want to know. Like on the Africa Twin 1100, it has Apple CarPlay. I don't need Apple CarPlay. I just want to see how fast I'm going and if my ABS is turned off.
Just because the Tenere is a Luddite cousin of the ADV world doesn't mean it's not well thought out. Tall, heavy bikes want to compress the rear spring and squat, lightening the front and reducing the traction to that pretty important front tire. So what Yamaha did to prevent this was to change the geometry of the sprockets and the suspension, placing the front sprocket high and making the rear sprocket tall. Now rather than squat down, the bike now anti-squats, using the rear tire's torque to push the front tire down into the ground.
It's really quite neat because when you hit the throttle hard, it doesn't kind of sink down in the butt like most other bikes do. It kind of gets up and gets kind of giddy and just kind of takes off, which is really nice to not have that squat when you hit the throttle. It seems to hook up better. Traction's really nice that way on it. I want to hop on a bike, I want full power, I want to be able to control my bike myself. I don't want a computer doing it for me, which the Tenere 700 is the only one that comes like that. All the other bikes have rider modes, ABS that you can't turn off at the front wheel, and just computers. Stock suspension on this is amazing. Lots of people say it's not good, but they probably just haven't played with it and adjusted it to their weight and riding style. I did adjust the suspension to be a lot stiffer just for when I'm off-road and you're hitting G-outs and bumps and stuff, that way you don't bottom out. For heavier riders, most guys do change the springs. Even if you're not a suspension guy and don't know about suspension, it's good. Just play with the clickers. You know, if things feel too soft, make it a bit stiffer. If things are rebounding back too fast, adjust it. Just play with it. They're clickers. If you don't like it, it's really easy to turn it back to where it was. The braking performance is absolutely amazing. They're Brembo brakes, and Yamaha is the only one that has a button that turns off both front and rear ABS, which most other models are rear brakes only that get turned off with the ABS button. So the T7 being the only one that I know of that turns off both front and rear ABS is amazing. Because on my Africa Twin, there's a few times where I came up out of a little launch and went to hit front brake to stop to not go into a creek, and with ABS only turning off to the rear wheel on the Africa Twin, it's almost like you have a big dead spot in your lever. So you pull your lever and just nothing happens because the ABS doesn't know to engage or not. So in that instance, it's absolutely horrible and terrifying when you have basically no front brake because the ABS is trying to think of what to do. Honestly, terrifying. I mean, Yamaha's done really well to use the same engine that's in the MT7, the FZ7, they put it in here. There's Yamaha dealerships all over Canada and the States. There's parts available, and really the dealer network is great. Like some of the other bikes I've had, either say the Austrian bikes or European bikes, are a lot higher maintenance. They require more valve checks, oil changes, and just overall cost of those parts and oils cost more. Whereas with the Japanese bikes, their quality is amazing. First valve check is at 42,000 K on this. Oil changes are cheaper, parts are cheaper, just overall cost of ownership on a Japanese bike is cheaper, and yet they come with warranty and you'll never ever use it. For a highway bike, it's absolutely great. I did a trip on my last Tenere 700 out into BC. We did highway, dirt, some like forestry trunk roads. Did about 2,500 K on that trip, and it did wonderful. Everywhere from 50 kilometer an hour on the highway up to 120 on the number one. Doesn't vibrate, it doesn't get buzzy, it just purrs along. Fuel range, I was getting right around just a hair, probably under 400 kilometers on a tank, which I found to be really, really good. That's, I mean, if you're running it almost dry, but right around 400. Well, the T7 is a wheelie fun machine. It can wheelie like crazy. I mean, in first, second, and third, you don't even have to clutch it up. Just a little bit of throttle, a little bit of rebound and push up, and it pops up into a wheelie. The balance point is amazing. It'll hold a wheelie for a long, long time. The aftermarket support for this bike is amazing. I think the Tenere 700 right now is probably the hottest bike on the market, and there's just every single accessory you can imagine and more accessories coming out all the time. On my first Tenere 700, the modifications I did was Donner Tech handles on the back because I fall over a lot and it's really easy to pick it up that way. Plus they're good for storage and you can add a rear rack to it and stuff like that. The Donner Tech brace up there as well. The headlight, if you don't have it, any rough terrain you're on at night, the whole headlight just kind of goes like this on the road. So the Donner Tech stabilizer helps a lot with that. And then I also put on a slip-on exhaust for the sound and Moto's tires. I went with the Tractionator Adventures because they're just, you can't beat them. They're the best adventure tire there is. Traction on the highway, on dirt, they last really, really long. They're amazing. I mean, the KTM you pay way more money for. It doesn't even come with LED headlights. That was a big point to me. Those headlights are bright. At night, they're amazing. And then you pay more money for a KTM 890 and the headlight's like a glowworm sitting up there. As far as like price-wise, the Tenere 700 is the same price as a KTM 690, which you're comparing, you know, like a big dual sport to a full-on adventure bike. It's really hard to beat like price point for the Tenere 700. If you're thinking about buying a Tenere 700, I would say absolutely go get one while you can get one. They're really, really hard to find right now. Availability is low, but if you can find one, go and get it. You will not be sad. It just does everything. It's miles per gallon, there's nothing that can beat it.
While I don't know how many gallons fit into a smile, I do know that when Riley said the Tenere 700 is fun to ride, he wasn't lying. While filming this, he let me ride his Tenere, and coming from a 100-pound lighter DR650, I was blown away with how light the bike felt. Didn't feel anything like the Africa Twin I've ridden, or even the KTM 990 I rode this summer. I was instantly comfortable riding it off-road. It felt playful and nimble, all while being smooth and predictable. Riding the Tenere once left me wanting more, and if that's not the ultimate compliment, then I don't know what is.